This is the portion of the service that we set aside for a prophecy update. We have for about a year and a half now been looking at Bible prophecy. We happen to believe that we are in the last days, the last moments of world history as we know it, because the Bible has foretold certain specific events that would be present in the last days. And as we look around geopolitically, we see many of these things which were foretold by the prophets of old, as well as Jesus and many prophecies in the New Testament. And it seems to fit very precisely with these prophecies. So today, I want to look at something that was set in motion recently that I believe has moved us one step closer to an Old Testament prophecy regarding Jerusalem and specific to Israel. Newsmax.com reported on May 14th how that Iran was behind the Beirut takeover and has their eyes on Israel. The article said senior Iranian officials were directly involved in planning and carrying out Hezbollah's successful takeover of Beirut, which happens to be where I was born, in Beirut, Lebanon, and believe that their victory is the first step in a new war on Israel and stepped up attacks in Iraq, sources in Tehran tell Newsmax. The coordination between the Iranian regime and Hezbollah was so close that Hezbollah leader Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah dispatched a personal envoy to brief Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini and President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in Tehran last week, just as his fighters were encircling the Prime Minister's residence in downtown Beirut late Thursday night. What's the significance of this? Well, we know, according to Ezekiel, that Iran will play a huge role in the attack that is led against Israel, with Russia by her side, primarily as forerunners. But what makes this even more intriguing and more potentially fulfilling of Bible prophecy is the closeness of proximity that Beirut and Lebanon has to Israel. If you look at a map, you'll see that, of course, Lebanon borders Israel, and Syria borders as well, Lebanon primarily. So this is key, as we'll see in a moment here, but I want to draw your attention to a Wall Street Journal article that came out on May 23rd about the divisions that are now surfacing between the United States and Israel on strategy. The article said dramatic shifts in Middle East diplomacy during the past week, including a political deal in Lebanon and Israeli-Syrian peace talks, are exposing significant strategic divisions between the United States and its closest regional ally, Israel. The tensions described in interviews with U.S. and Israeli officials in recent months counter the widespread assumption that the Bush and Israeli governments march in lockstep on foreign policy. They also provide insight into why these new diplomatic initiatives may unravel ultimately, regional analysts said. The most profound strategic division between Washington and Jerusalem concerns Israel's engagement of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. This is unthinkable. Listen, Syria is not Israel's friend. It is interesting recently that Olmert, the prime minister currently of Israel, who has worse approval ratings than our president, which is pretty bad, is actually being ousted, and the process has begun to get him out. This is interesting because what he's doing right now is actually playing into the complete prophetic plan and program that are outlined for us in the scriptures. So with him getting sort of chummy all of a sudden with Syria plays into the hands of Iran, and not the least of which is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, whose sole goal, if I can say it that way, is to wipe Israel off the map, which again fulfills Bible prophecy, not the least of which is in Psalm 83, which prophesies how they will say, and I believe this is speaking of Ahmadinejad and others with him, that they will say, Psalm 83, in the last days, come, let us make her a nation no more. Let us wipe her off the map so that she is not a nation anymore. Let's destroy her. And they're echoing, they're actually fulfilling almost verbatim the prophecies found in places like Psalm 83. So what's the significance now of this Wall Street Journal article and this Newsmax.com article? There seems to be now a positioning vis-a-vis Lebanon / Syria under the banner of Iran and Russia with her to move in closer for the attack on Israel as prophesied, again, not just in Ezekiel, but the prophet Zechariah. A most interesting prophecy, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are probably familiar with it. We've looked at it on several occasions. I want to revisit it today because of these recent news articles. Zechariah chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. The whole chapter, the whole book, really, but this particular prophecy gives us some very specific details about how it's going to play out with the nations that are close in proximity to Israel, which would be Lebanon, which would be Syria, and would also include Iran. Because again, Iran really is the arm, and Syria the hand, and Lebanon the fingers. They all work in concert and in tandem, one with the other. This is why Iran has been behind this takeover of Lebanon. And it seems to be very fitting that Israel all of a sudden would start talking with Syria. It seems to be that, as Zechariah the prophet had foretold, that everything now is coming into place. And again, we've moved one step closer, I believe, to this fulfillment of this prophecy. Here's what it says. This is the word of the Lord concerning Israel. The Lord who stretches out the heavens, who lays the foundation of the earth, and who forms the spirit of man with him, declares, watch this, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Stop right there. First of all, this by its very nature validates that God is God and the true and living God, because it's Jerusalem and not Tokyo or New York. Now that might sound gnarly at first, but let me explain. Listen, this prophecy we couldn't even be talking about prior to 1948, let alone 1967. Against all odds, never before in the history of man did a nation return as a people, preserving their language to their homeland, as did Israel. This is a prophecy concerning Israel. Israel, the Jews, are God's chosen people. God has a plan for the Jewish people. And this is the prophecy concerning that plan he has for the people. See, once they return to the land, then all the nations surrounding her would attack her to try to remove her from the land that God brought her back to. So he says that I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends the surrounding peoples reeling.